Hello, everyone. We are almost halfway through the day as we welcome you to Wheel session on going beyond the balance sheet. I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to their lunch break, but bear with us as we are here to discuss an important topic that touches on soft skills for finance professionals in today's busy and dynamic business environment. And I would like to really set a tone here. Let's make this session an interactive one. So pop in a question or start working on the chats and put in maybe potentially where you're dialing from today, so we can see where all our audiences are. Because I know we had previous sessions, some viewers from New Zealand, from Australia, and also from other countries and continents. My name is Nina. I'm head of marketing here at Wheel, and today I'll be joined by Chloe Dung, who is our brilliant financial controller at Wheel. If you are not familiar with us, Wheel is the leading spend management solution in Australia, helping finance teams of all shapes and sizes to control spending and streamline their back office admin. Obviously, Wheel is the team behind the event, but we couldn't do it without our wonderful partners and sponsors. So a big thank you to Visa, Translucent, Fathom, Trace, Mayday, and the CFO magazine for making today possible. In case this is your first session for today, I would like to sort of quickly call out a couple of and share with you some house rules for today. Again, let's make this session very interactive. We want you to be involved, so please use the chat function and the Q&A function to ask any questions. We'll try to answer them during the session or at the end of our fireside chat. We'll make sure that we address the most of them. To set some sort of context for this session, and in the past summits, we've spoken at length about the changing role of the CFO, moving from being sort of back of office finance managers to cross-functional strategic team players. We've also seen a BDO starting to champion the idea of a chief value officer, and I really, really like that one, over the CFO title, as the roles of CFOs becomes more hands-on. This year, though, we are going a little bit beyond the CFO role and diving into how we can start to foster this culture of value creation at every level of the finance team and set up the future CFOs and be future business leaders in your teams for success. Chloe, the Chief Financial Officer, previously comes from larger teams at Vodafone, Amazon, and EY, both in Australia and in the US. And she's very, very passionate about this topic. She wants to change the perception of not just the CFO role, but also how we think of the finance function as a whole. So I'll stop sharing my screen quickly so you can see us. I thought we'd kick off today's session with the question of a key soft skills that all successful teams should be focusing on. So how do you define them in the context of finance professionals, and why are they so important?
Thanks, Dina. So as you mentioned, there's been a lot of focus on the shifting role of the CFO over the last 10 years or so. But I think this can also be said for all levels of the finance team. We've progressed a lot from the stereotype of the finance team, sitting in the corner, crunching numbers and not talking to anyone. Increasingly, when you're looking for someone, you want someone who's not only technical and has those skills, but is also able to work with the business to ultimately drive success. In terms of soft skills, I think it really comes down to the confidence and the communication skills that allows you to influence your stakeholders. And this is so important because it drives efficiency and positive outcomes for the business. It probably doesn't sound too different to like the soft skills that's important to other teams, but I think it's how you use those skills that changes from team to team. So I focus a lot on helping build soft skills on the team, not only because I think it is key in driving long-term success for them, but also for the business. But I think it also helps to drive engagement of the individual. Having the soft skills to drive a positive working relationship with different teams will just help them feel more involved with the business. And it just helps with retention because it's like a more positive environment for them to come to work every day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it inspires collaboration within the business as well. And it's absolutely great to see. And in your opinion and in your experience, which sort of soft skills do you believe are the most essential for all finance professionals to cultivate, and also why?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be anything that helps you drive visibility, influence, and just your brand, right? That's essential. And that doesn't happen if you're only getting half the story by looking at the numbers. It's important to build the big picture and, like you said, collaborate. Being on the floor with the sales team, understanding why, say, a marketing campaign has stalled, talking to different teams proactively and not just after we've seen the results in the numbers. That's why it's so important. And, these conversations look different with every business, with every team. But what will help us is just understanding the business better, and in turn drive just like the better outcomes, like I said. And, being able to take our stakeholders on the journey. I think explaining the why and not just the how. And to be able to get the buy-in. I think being able ultimately the soft skills is to get your stakeholders to listen to you to get the buy-in. That's, I think, the most important out of all of this.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I really do love how much we collaborate here at Whale between marketing and finance and other departments. So absolutely agree with you. And could you provide some specific instances and examples where these soft skills have a tangible impact on financial outcomes or decision making within Whale?
Yeah, okay. Like you said, like marketing and finance work super close in Will. And I think that's just because we have the rapport that we've built, and there's processes in line. And so, like, I think something that I really appreciate of how we work together is that whenever there is an initiative that's been considered, whether it's additional budget or just something we have already talked about but might change a little bit, because new things come up, is that marketing team members will approach us proactively and involve the finance team throughout the process. I think that's the key. We know at the beginning we're involved throughout and not just at the end. I think that's probably not the most ideal outcome. And it's just made a world of difference in terms of faster decision making and efficiency, because what I've seen, from previous experiences, that if we don't have that rapport, we find it at the end. And unfortunately, sometimes these initiatives, don't get approved. And then the marketing team, or whichever team that is, has spent a lot of time doing the planning, wasted time. And when they could have done something else, or with the right input, could have just maybe pivoted a bit and could have still made things work. So I think that's kind of a really positive, tangible result that I can share.
Yeah, amazing. And I don't suspect we have many marketers joining today's session, but as a marketer, it is incredibly important to be almost like best friends with your finance team, because taking them on a journey and really explaining the why, or why certain decisions are made and why certain investments are made, but more importantly, what impact does it have to the business? Because that's what I guess you and your team want to know.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think just that collaboration, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the strategies and approaches, what have you found successful in sort of fostering that culture of value and then even nurturing those soft skills in finance teams? So if you could provide some examples to the audience, that would be absolutely great.
Yeah. I think something that sounds easy to do, but is also very effective, is just allowing your team members to take ownership of what they do, especially on things that may take them out of their comfort zone. Right. I think it's very tempting as a more senior member who's had the experience and gone through all that to jump in and be like, you can do it X, Y, Z. It'll make you work faster. That's the result. But I think giving the team member the opportunity to figure things out, but obviously be available for support when they need it, is so important for them, because they need to build that muscle to be able to problem solve early on, so that they have that confidence that they can resolve things by themselves. Even if it means it does take a little bit longer, I think it's worth that investment, so that they will build that, like I said, that muscle to be able to problem solve and take the initiative to do things. And I think obviously having the processes and software in place will help encourage conversation and just, put that in the position where, this conversation has to take place, because there's a process or a software in there that's kind of prompting it. For example, we obviously use Will to manage all our expenses internally, and the product itself helps us set out, the expense processes, and the business knows what can and cannot do and what their responsibilities are. So, if someone forgets something, the product reminds them. So it takes away a bit of that grinding that sometimes happens in a traditional team, which may not have the software to help prompt that, because oftentimes people think of finance team as like the blockers. They come to you, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. But here the product takes that out, so then what you're having the conversation is, how can I help? So then it'll be like, hey Chloe, actually the budget I had was only X, I'm going over. And it'll be like, okay, how can I help? What is it? Understand it. How can we, whether build the business case or increase the budget because it's within something else that we're okay with. So it's more so that it allows us to have more meaningful conversation, and being able to have that will in turn build your soft skills to have other conversations and bigger conversations.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think it's a good segue into a question from our audience. So Karen has asked that one of her clients has used Wheel, and it was absolutely great for finance managers until one of the employees abused the privilege. So what's the advice around managing that? And I suspect it's all around proactive communication and implementing these policies, but really interested to hear from you, being at sort of the front line there. How do you situation?
Yeah, so absolutely being proactive about like what the policy is, so it's kind of like, it's very transparent. This is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And just when you do have these conversations, look, I think for the most part, most people are like quite sensible in what they do. And when they do overspend or whatnot, there's usually a reason, or it's just like honest mistake, I'd say. But if there is a bad actor, it's really when you're having that conversation, being really objective about it. This is the policy. We know what we can and cannot do. It's not a personal thing. I'm not personally attacking you, but this is where the business stance is. And I think most people can't really argue that, because it's not emotional. It's just about the business.
Yeah, and how would you communicate it with the management in this instance of the question? Management actually made them cancel all cards. So how would you then communicate it back to the management that it was a singular instance, and sort of bringing back the benefits of it?
Yeah, so I think it's I can understand some management can be quite reactive sometimes, and depending on the scale of this issue, it could be really like, no, it's bad, like don't trust it anymore. But I guess it's just again, building that rapport and telling them this is the benefits of it, and you can also just also bring on the table, these are the additional controls that we're going to put in place in order to prevent this going forward. And I guess most of the times, what in my experience is, oftentimes they're very reactive because they just saw this one thing. But when you actually tell them to take a step back, you can actually bring them on board.
Yeah, and it seems like as finance professionals, you kind of need to have those soft skills applying to talk to your senior stakeholders as well as to the rest of the employees, and making sure that the policies are applied, but they're the right policies in place in the first.
Yes, absolutely.
Erin, thank you so much. It's an amazing question. So I would like to encourage everyone in the audience to keep asking these questions, because they are helping us shape this story, because it is definitely an interesting one. And Chloe, I'm interested because you obviously worked in some businesses of different sizes, from very, very large enterprise to startup. And does this approach differ depending on the size of the business? Like, what are you seeing as the key differences, or is it all very, very similar?
So I would say in terms of differences, is it different? It's yes and no. Because these soft skills and how you approach things, it's going to be applicable regardless of the size of the business, right? I think it's very transferable. The difference, I would say, is, say for a smaller business, a startup, you might know every little detail of the business, and you probably know every single person in the business, what they do, and you work quite closely with a lot of them. That's just the nature of a smaller place. But if you're in a very big company, like, you're really not going to know 2,000 people by name, every single person. That's not going to happen. And what you might end up being able to influence is more a slither of the business, because oftentimes the financing will be segmented by business, like business departments. So if you work with, say, the engineers, you'll know that process and you'll get to know them really well, and you will have the soft skills to, influence them. And the knowledge, like I was saying, get to know the business, like of each different department will be a bit different. But that's still very effective. Like, even though you don't know everything about the whole business, your role in here is that part of the business very well, and you can still influence and make positive change.
And do you build internal advocates for the finance team? Like, do you think that is very important in building these internal advocates? Will that help you bring others onto the journey, especially in more of the larger businesses?
Absolutely, because I think the larger the business, the bigger the teams, right? And it's really so. For example, when I was at Vodafone, like, I worked a lot with the different product managers and the engineers, and I worked. And the product managers will be my advocate. Will be like, if something comes up, talk to Chloe, talk to finance. Like, we're not doing this until we get their approval of these business cases, for example. But if they weren't my advocate, things might just happen, and especially for such a big place. It's very easy for things to just happen without you even knowing. But these advocates will almost help you gatekeep that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have one last question from me, and then we'll open up to the audience. What does success look like? Like, what would you say is that the optimal success for the finance professionals and finance leaders to make sure that they are impactful and they are contributing to their sort of overall business decision making?
Yeah, I think it comes down to 3 key things. It's visibility, influence, and brand, right? And that will help you actually influence the business so that you can focus on your bread and butter. And if you can't influence your peers, it just means everything that you try to do will be a bit of an uphill battle. As a finance team, we can do the most amazing analysis, implement the most bulletproof processes. But if the people in the business aren't going to adopt it and they don't want to talk to you, none of that is effective, right? So I think and if you can do those 3 things, it just means people will think of you, and like all your hard work will actually influence into something, and that gives you some satisfaction in your work and your overall brand, right? Like, you don't want people, like I said, for them to think, oh, don't talk to Chloe. If you talk to her, this project's not going to go along the way. What you want it to be is more, let's talk to her so that she'll give us, we'll have an open discussion so that we can get a more bulletproof business case. And actually, when we present it will actually pass through. Like, enablement rather than blocking. That's the most, like, in terms of brand, that's important.
I really resonate with that incredibly well. And especially, again, bringing my marketing head onto this conversation, finance team is quite often seen as a showstopper unless you work really well with them. And then that way, I think when that collaboration is established and when there is a bit of a business dynamic happening between finance and marketing, then finance team is actually enablers for growth, because essentially that's what it is. And that comes to that sort of value creation side of this conversation, which is great. So I've got one question from the audience. It says that I'm in a finance team where the executives of the business think that a finance role is just to crunch the numbers. And how can I have that conversation with the executives to change that? So let's think of potentially like a very traditional way of looking at the business. How do you change somebody's point of view who usually has a very strong point of view?
Look, I think that's a common thing that a lot of people in finance might come across, because, like you said, traditionally, that's what finance is thought of. Like, you're just a support function. You file a tax, you crunch the numbers, you do the reporting. But what I think we need to then advocate for ourselves is that we're way more than that. Yes, all that is true, because those things you have to do. But where we can add value is actually, we can do the analysis. We can show you that these things, these initiatives, if you forecast it, this will make the business this much more money. Like, we can actually add value. And it's not just about doing the things that has to be done. And it's just having the chance to actually talk to them, advocate for yourself, and sometimes it can be a really slow process, and you might find yourself having to repeat yourself again and again and again. But eventually, if you, and like I say, it comes down to visibility, influence, and brand. If you put yourself in the right situations, get yourself involved in the right conversations over and over again, it will crack, right? I would say don't get discouraged is when you first start to have those conversations. People go, yeah, 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 cool. And then nothing happens because it's not that they're not listening. It's just that other priorities come. So you just have to keep advocating and then you will get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely love that. So there's more questions from the audience. So how do you help the department leads work with you when they always go to the CEO regardless? And it feels like it's a tick box exercise instead of a true business partner. How do you position yourself to those departmental leaders, I guess, to ensure that they don't skip you and go to the CEO?
So I think in that case, you need buy-in both from the leaders and the CEO, right? The messaging has to be aligned that, you know, come to finance first to do, I guess, the checks and balances and, you know, the forecasting, the modeling, whatever it is, depending on what the conversation that needs to be had is, and show that where you add value. And you need to convince the CEO as well, because if the CEO isn't on your side, then it's a bit of a moot point, because then if it bypasses you, like you said, it could just be a wasted, it's just like a tick the box, I have to do it. So you need to show and maybe put some processes in, but show that those processes is not just a tick the box processes, actually like show that I'm doing this because it will save us money, because you don't want to not do these checks and balances and you've just wasted, it goes nowhere, right? So I think that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, awesome. And there's a good segue into the next question. I just want to say, audience, amazing influx of questions. Keep them going. They're so super engaging and super exciting. So do you think that finance teams have become more data analysts and storytellers, especially in larger organizations?
Yes, I think so. I think data is everything, right? And that's where it's also very interesting, because when you actually look at the data and see what it tells you and being able to translate that to a story to the rest of the business who may not be as like good with the numbers, good with the data, that's where our value is, right? And not just, you know, tick the box, do some expenses. That's not where we can add value. And so, yeah, I 100% think that is true.
Yeah, love it. And speaking of data, there is another question on this says, I have difficulties in getting data from staff. Oh, hold on, yeah. But when they contact us in needing a report or copy, we need to drop everything for them. And honestly, it feels very, very familiar for us in marketing. It seems to be a trend, obviously. Any advice on how to handle this? So I would say it's a bit of a twofold question: how to handle the requests coming into the finance teams for reports and copy without having to literally drop everything, and then how to then get that data back in order for you to make those create those stories to tell and create those analyses as well.
Yeah, so I guess with the first one, I think that is common. Like I've had that happen to myself as well, right? And really it's more, everyone thinks what they need is urgent, right? That's just how it is. But how urgent is it really? And also like work out what they want to achieve, right? Not just, I need this report. Okay, but what are you trying to do with that report? Because maybe we already have something that we work on, we produce monthly and whatnot that will serve the same purpose. So we don't need to recreate it. And if it is something that is really crucial, maybe we can make it a regular cadence so that, okay, every month we do X report, because then you can plan it versus something that's so like, you know, ad hoc. So that's that. And then you can also set things up so they can do things themselves, right? Like they say, you know, teach someone to fish versus like catching the fish for them. And when you do that, also you need to tell them like, this is what's on my plate. I'm doing this for you. I can do it by X date if it's not that urgent. And then that way you build that rapport, right? Because it's kind of like, yes, I'm helping you. So then it links to the second part of the question. I'm helping you. So when I need stuff from you, I would want you to help do the same and be able to provide the data. And the same goes, right? We don't want to be like, I need the data, give it to me today. Have the cadence, I need it by X day. Can we do this? Can we do it on a regular cadence? So it's just like building that two-way communication so that we can work together.
Yeah, love it. This is an interesting question. So, how do you encourage finance staff to come out of their shell and focus more on improving their soft skills instead of focusing on crunching numbers and doing more complex reports, and especially the ones that really enjoy dealing with the numbers more than people? And it is, I think it's quite interesting because finance people are usually like the quiet ones in the office, which you say, but how do you encourage them to step out of that and develop those soft skills, and more particularly communication and collaboration?
Yeah, so I think it's just putting them in situations where they need to do the communication, right? So for example, if they love crunching numbers, they do this analysis, let them present to the team.
Yeah.
Right. Oftentimes some people might just want to do it and then they feel a bit nervous about presenting. That part they're like, oh, let their managers do it. I'll just do the numbers, you do that. No, you did the work, you can present it. And while that might be a bit uncomfortable for them, it's building that muscle to be able to do that. And putting them in that situation kind of makes them do it. And if they do it more, they'll get better at it.
Yeah, I really love that. I think as leaders, our job isn't really to give ourselves the stage. It is to get our team in a good shape and set them for success so they have the stage.
Absolutely. And also like for that example, like if they feel really uncomfortable, like I will go with them, but I'll just sit there so that if there any curly questions come up and I see that they might struggle a bit just presenting their thoughts, I will jump in just to help with that, but they will take the stage. I'm there for support only.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. And in terms of the other leaders in a business, another question from the audience, like what is your best practices to help the non-finance leaders like marketing, sales, or operations to contribute to reducing spend and cost and increasing sales, since sort of finance is covering that cash management to doing it effectively and efficiently?
So it's more regular catch-ups like we do, Nina. So we agree on a budget already, but it's very easy to go over it. And it's not even malicious, right? Sometimes it's just you're doing the work, things roll, and then you're not always looking at what's come in. So that's why we're there. So we will run the numbers and we will have that talk every month, where we at, here's where it is, have we gone over? And like I said, you can have technology to help stop that as well, because we have budgets put in will. So if it ticks over, it just won't get paid. So, I mean, obviously, if we've already used the service, we've paid it, but at least we know at that point and not like, a month later.
Yeah. And then to sort of chime in from a marketing perspective as well, is I think it is communicating that it is not really about reducing cost and reducing budget, but the whys behind it and what is the growth rate. So I think the frustration usually comes when there is a talk about reducing marketing budget, but then targets stay the same or targets increase. So really helping the marketing team with some sort of RevOps insights and data, like Chloe said, in understanding on what is actually working, what is driving the business, and how do then we invest more into that as opposed to into everything that we want to do. And I 100% agree with what you're saying. Interesting question on the AI. So obviously we wouldn't be relevant in this conversation if we didn't speak AI at all. So we have to touch a little bit on it. But with the AI obviously coming into place, do you think that it is a threat for some of the accountants in the world, more especially those doing sort of the clerical work wherein they will be replaced by AI?
I see it more as an opportunity, right? Because I can see why some people might see it, and we've read it in the media. There's a lot of talk on that. But what it does, how I see AI will do is, yes, it might take away some of the tedious, more mundane work. But what that will do is push people to do more of the value add stuff. So I see it more as an opportunity so that people will do things that are more engaging and more, more, like I said, value add, because all that stuff that the AI, for now anyway, I don't know how it's going to progress, you know, like exponentially in the next 5-10 years or 1 or 2 years. But I think the tedious stuff that can be done just by, like, you know, hours labor, take that away, then the people can actually do things that can actually engage them more and drive the success and see where they're going, you know?
Yeah, and I would probably say that that kind of applies to Wheel as well, like removing quite a lot of that manual work and admin work that finance teams are currently doing, and enabling them to elevate themselves and start doing the things that it probably gets them more excited and what they actually want to do. And another question comes from more like a lean finance teams. What is the sort of one change that it can focus on to start creating the most value? Because lean finance teams are usually very stretched. They do everything and anything that comes into the finance realm. So what is it that they, what is the one thing that it could focus on to start talking to value and delivering value?
Yeah. I can speak to that because I think we have a pretty lean team here, but we do that by choice. I think really investing in a good technology stack, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, we talk about value add, we talk about the things that move the business forward, but there are BAU things that has to happen. And with the finance team, your hours are finite, right? There's a capacity issue. So really investing in the right technology stack that will help you take away some of that stuff that takes a lot of your time, but may not be that value added, or as a business may not see as, you know, as important because it's not making money or it's not driving, you know, objectives. So if you can take as much of that out and make that simpler for yourself, it'll give you more time to focus on the things that, you know, will put finance more on the map and be more of influence.
Awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely great. So I think we are almost to the end of our questions and Q&A. We'll run a quick poll because I've been getting quite a lot of messages privately on how do we get in touch with Wheel and can we hear more from Wheel. So we'll run a quick poll. If anyone who is interested in getting in touch with us and hearing more about our platform, please tick the box that you would like us to contact you, and we'll kind of organize a demo or just talk to you the platforms and some of the benefits. And then we'll start, addressing one more question that came, and is also an interesting topic, I think, in this whole world of some companies are fully remote, some companies are going back to the office, some companies are kind of like hybrid. So what do you think about finance teams who work from home remotely 100%? In terms of, I guess that, I suspect the question is around collaboration and making sure that you still have that influence whilst working remotely.
I think that can only work if the business is set up to be working remotely, and also if you already have really good rapport with all the business leaders and the different teams, so that if something comes up, they will come to you, which I think for the most part is a little bit difficult. I think hybrid is good, like, you know, so you have that flexibility of working from home. Yeah, 1 to 3 days, whatever that works, so that you're in person, you can have those those chats. And also a lot of it I find is it's not even just formal meetings that you set up, because you can do that remote, right? It's more just, you know, walk past each other, you have a chat, you go for a coffee, and that's how you build a really good rapport. So personally, I think while I think a 100% remote can work, it really means you need everyone on board so that you have that cross collaboration. But hybrid puts an environment where it kind of puts everyone in a situation where you are a little bit more collaborative. Personally, that's what I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think if obviously business is set up in a full remote way, then it's even more important to develop these soft skills, especially written communication skills. Because obviously most of business have these tools such as Slack, Teams, and what have you, and making sure that you are building those relationships beyond those meetings that have a certain agenda. Because obviously jumping on meetings, going through agenda, everybody wants to be efficient. Nobody wants to be in another meeting. But making sure that all the remote, you still have those touch points with your coworkers, and they may not be at a water cooler station, but you get to know your colleagues and build rapport on a personal basis in order for them to collaborate better and to be able to influence them better.
Absolutely. I think when you work remote, I think it's very easy to get into the habit of just being very transactional. You know, I'll call you if I need to do XYZ. Okay, we've talked about it, we get it done, we hang out. So you don't really get to know someone on a more personal level. And that's, I think, where you build that really good rapport. So yeah, absolutely, I agree. So even if you do need to make that effort. And even if it means you're not going into the office regularly, you still have those team catch-ups, whether it's once a month, once a quarterly, go for lunch or something. So you actually know the person.
Yeah, absolutely. We may have time for one more question, because I think we are almost to the end of the hour. And I know there was another, unless somebody else pops in, there was a question from anonymous person saying that I know, as a finance leader, I know I have issues with communication. What do I do? What are the steps to build those skills as a leader?
I think practice makes perfect. And I think nobody needs, I don't think when we say we need good communication skills, soft skills, no one's expecting us to be the social butterfly of the office, right? It's just building that muscle to be able to talk to your peers, talk to not just your peers, up and below, and be able to convey what you want to. And it's just keep doing it. It may be uncomfortable because, you know, it doesn't feel like, if you self-assessing that you may not be as good at it, you may be a bit reluctant to do it, but just keep doing it. It's like presentations, right? The first time you do it, it's like get really nervous. You do it a few times and it's just like, you know, second nature.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. Well, thank you so much. This is obviously a topic you're very passionate about, so it really shines through, and it's great. Thank you everyone for joining in. I'll just quickly introduce our next session, which is super exciting. We are stretch your legs. As I say, stretch your legs, have a bite to eat, and then come back to our speed dating. Speed dating is a really fun session, and it's usually the highlight as well of this event. Everybody loves it. We have really great feedback from our audience. It is a session where you get to hear elevator pitch from a handful of leading apps for finance professionals, and you can find hopefully your perfect match in terms of the apps. So, oopsie. I think I may have shared a wrong slide, but let's see you back at 1:30 for our speed dating session. Have a good day, everyone, and see you soon. Thank you.